Rob, do we want to wait another minute or should we get started? I don't know if it's my ear pods that don't work. Anyone else?
No, Rob, we can't hear you.
Okay, it's not just me.
This is a known issue with Rob's laptop.
Computers still are difficult.
Just, well, I guess I can take notes. I'll just be on my phone. Yeah. Okay. Good. You can kick off.
All right, great. Well, thanks everyone. Just a couple of quick reminders on the community side that there is a code of conduct. This meeting is being recorded and transcribed as well, and we do make these available afterwards. Do abide by the code of conduct, and any issues, please let us know. You can, if you haven't yet joined the Slack, please do. There's a link in the notes, in the meeting notes. I'll put those in the chat as well so folks can access those. You can actually ping the @community team on Slack if you do need any help with anything. And then just one quick call out to everyone is we've been working on improving the documentation on the llm-d.ai public website by trying to synchronize that from GitHub repositories. So we're putting together a proposal to find a way to essentially standardize our docs in the individual repos and then essentially sync them over so we don't have to duplicate a lot of work. So it's still a work in progress, but it's open for comment if anyone is particularly interested in that topic. So that's all I have on my side. So I'll pass it over to you, Rob.
All right. Thanks. So in terms of just updates, like I think everyone's aware, we had the 0.2 release earlier this week, which is obviously a huge milestone. That's starting to bring together a lot of the well-lit paths. I think there's a lot of learnings we can take from 0.2 in terms of some of our overall processes around release engineering and how we all work together. So I think Andy and Greg had a proposal around how we can deal with some of the challenges of having a really distributed set of repos that we're working with. And then I wanted to just talk about some of the themes for the 0.3 release. I think one thing for this project is we're operating in a very, very competitive and fast-moving space. And so I think we need to keep the momentum that we developed over the course of the past month or so and really keep pedal to the metal to drive out our offering, because we're going to get left behind if we don't keep the pace up. So that's some of our thoughts. So I'll pass it over to Andy and Greg, who have been thinking through some of the challenges in the current process and what we can do to deal with our kind of distributed repo structure for having some more automated integration tests, which for the 0.2 release was effectively completely manual. So I'll pass it off to them now.
Thanks, Rob. So this is not a formal proposal. This is more so like a kind of litmus test, and we wanted to show to the community kind of what we were thinking before diving too far down this rabbit hole. And the current situation for what we're looking at is using an internal tool that Red Hat uses called Conflux. They've built it as an open source solution, so the upstream is completely free to use. And we have deployed a self-hosted instance of Conflux to manage builds to a Oracle Cloud instance, and we plan to then roll this out to a OpenShift cluster, give people SSO access to this from GitHub, from llm-d incubation and llm-d. And hopefully this will help to kind of manage our releases where you can have these applications and all these individual components underneath it. So let's say in the v0.3.0 application release, you've got all the components that we know about, and it will manage and track the different versions of, hey, infra in this case, the Helm charts are at v1.1.2. Inference scheduler may have bumped and now it's at v0.4.1 or whatever it is. And we'll keep track of those. I think Andy has the basics of our deployment that we put up here. This was put together in about 2 days. Why don't you walk us through what you got here, Andy, and kind of show people some of these components? I'm not able to hear you if you're speaking. If not, I can.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. Is it showing Conflux?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Right. So as Greg was saying, so Conflux does a great job of taking disparate organizations and disparate repositories within those organizations and GitHub and making sense of them, bringing them together into one location. This leverages existing Tecton technology, which is, well tried and true, and underneath which we can put together an application like llm-d, and within it you have components, subcomponents. What I did is I forked repos, made them my own inside for scheduler, SIM, and sidecar. So the first integration test that I wanted to try and see if I could get end to end would be sidecar and scheduler to work together. And so I've made builds successfully of these, and you can look inside and see what's in the build. This would be accessible as read artifacts for all those with access to the Git repository. You can see this should look familiar to most of you for what you went through for MVP. This is out of the box, parameterized and with customized capital K, and is available and then is inserted into the individual repositories. So none of this that you see here was built by me. This was out of the box available, and it's pretty robust. I've been running it nonstop for about 3 days now. So you have a clone of the repo, build the container, so the existing Docker file that you have, and then it does all the scanning for Claire, ClamAV, and eventually builds an SBOM. Once that's built, you get what's called a snapshot. The snapshot is then used as a point in time, which this is, basically you can think of it as a container image that's available or references a container image. The container images are hosted inside of our Quay repository. So these are officially inside the Quay repo. And then once they're available there, you do a next step, which is an integration test. So this one that I built was for just scheduling and routing. And of course, it doesn't do anything right now other than run the bits and pump them out into a deployment. And so you can see in the logs, this actually goes through and pulls the snapshot. And because this is running as a result of, let's say, the first one that we did, the routing sidecar, you can see the routing sidecar bits from the snapshot are now available. You get your SHA hash and all that good stuff. But you can see the one that is not available is the scheduler component, because that is not what this was launched from, the snapshot. So what it does is it just goes out and looks, hey, what's the latest scheduler image that you had available to you? And it says, oh, well, that's the one. So then it creates a deployment and a service that's deployed to the cluster where the Conflux is running. It can be in the same namespace as the rest of the bits that are running within Conflux, or we can make it a separate one. I'm working on a template for making a separate one now. Then it goes ahead and runs a test. The test will go ahead and then spit out what it collected from a curl, let's just say. Then it cleans up the namespace, takes out the information, and then evaluates and sends back a code to say this either worked or it didn't. And so essentially at that point now what you have is the ability to roll that up into what's called a release. And so for releases, I'll let Greg take over. Greg can show your release.
Greg, you're muted.
Thank you for that, Tyler. I always make that mistake. So we didn't have time to draft up a release artifact in this, like little example we're building. So this is an existing release from Red Hat RHEL AI. It basically maps to container images. It has a snapshot for the release, which will tell you what the versioning is. of all the separate components. If you want to publish different tags for your images, you can do it as such. And then the snapshot, let me grab that snapshot up here. I'll make this bigger. Okay, and then like it's a, you have a component name, it will tell you like what the build path is, what the actual Docker file is, the revision, the git SHA that you are looking at that repo at, and then what is the repo URL, as well as the container image that is produced for that specific like component of the snapshot. So this should help us manage our release engineering overall. Andy, if you want to go back and share it, there are like two general things I want to touch on. They have secrets. So if we want to say hook into infrastructure from our friends at AMD, if they want to start testing ROCm stuff coming up, we can maybe have a kube config for a cluster that has access to those types of GPUs. Same with our friends at Google. If they have, GKE stuff where they want to test TPUs and we want to expand, we kind of create this plug and play infrastructure where you just come up with a task. You can use the access to find in the secret, and we can roll out our testing schemes on different things. And then secondly, kind of going with that are the integration tests, that this gives us a unified place to automate our integration tests. I don't want to take up too much time, so that's kind of just an overview. We would love some feedback. If there's strong enough interest in this, we can put together a doc or something like that, or whatever the community thinks are good next steps.
Any feedback from like overall non-Red Hatters? Obviously, like we're using a Conflux tool here, which is based on like which is something we obviously use internally. It's not going to be using any internal Red Hat systems, and there'll be access outside. But we're trying to solve this problem of non-mono repo kind of setup, and so So Clayton, go ahead.
I would say one of the things is like we're going to have a relatively small scope of components, and we'd actually rather have fewer in the next release or couple as we start to like roll things into upstreams. So it actually probably is okay to be trying something out like this. Like we're not going straight off the cliff of we need 50 components all working together, all released together. What we should probably do though is deliberately scope for 0.3 and 0.4 exactly what those concentric rings are. Like the stuff we're having, like the well-lit paths need to be a small set of components, and like if we can kill the routing sidecar, if we can move to the upstream image, those are good things. Or we don't have to, just like those are good processes to do. Let's keep the rings small, but then that we need to have a policy for how the rest of the components draft. And in my view, it's a little bit of like there's the core components, which is very carefully curated, and then there's the broader ecosystem, which needs to be testing against frequent, but they're not, for 0.3 and 0.4, they aren't release artifacts per se. They are part of the incubation ecosystem. They have their own processes. We'll have quick starts and examples that let you try them, but the goal is not to bring all of those into the core very quickly. And like autoscaler is another example. Like we're still a little bit a ways from that. So seems like it is a good place to try this at least, and the risks seem relatively low because we don't need a full story by 0.3. We need a better story from 0.3. Andy?
Yeah, Clayton, totally agree. I'm glad you're on to that. What's nice to hear you say is I didn't hear any discussion about the mechanics. So what's great is you see it already, the vision of turning a welded path into actual code that we can run in a pipeline. So I think that's all doable. I think one of the first things we need to one of the things we need to focus on, aside from the infrastructure stuff bits here, if we agree to go this way, is just to figure out how that manifest maps back. I think that's the majority of the work, the heavy lifting here. And I think you're right to scope it for different versions and on an ongoing basis is smart. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe like we try to hit one path or two paths, and then we can have like a more of an experimentation style approach. Like I think it's totally okay if a bunch of the components switch to this and they're using some core artifact, but like maybe the prototype sounds like, can we get one of the paths with a minimal set of dependencies working? Is kind of what I was hearing you say.
You got it.
All right. Oh, Sally, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to mention, I wanted to like double that. I've been trying to add a feature across the stack, the tracing feature, and testing that has been like nearly impossible. Especially I noticed that some of the flags have changed from camel case to like hyphenated, and trying to track that across all of the different helm charts that have to come together to deploy it is really difficult. And I can't imagine it's going to be fun for most people developing this. So the easier we can make those well-lit paths and, you know, finding those problems for the users, like that's going to be key to growing the community, I think.
Very nice. Thank you, Sally. All right. Thanks, Andy and Greg. I think this is great, and it seems like we have a good path to move forward, unless anyone speak now. But I think it's clear what we need to do for O.3. So thanks for the progress on that so far. All right, moving on. The other items here is just moving towards like the O.3 release. So I have a couple of themes here. That I think we want to try to accomplish over. Oh, sorry, Pete, would you mind sharing the screen? I'm like on my phone because of my audio. Sorry. So a couple of like overall like kind of themes that we were thinking is, like first, committing to the mission. We have a few kind of high level principles of the project. First is doing everything in a cross-platform way. So looking at, both heterogeneous accelerators. So AMD and Google TPU are the ones that we're sort of targeting for O.3 to have some initial support for at least a subset of the key well-lit paths as an overarching like top level goal. And then secondarily is the networking side. For the previous release, we looked at TCP and InfiniBand based KV cache transfer. Sorry, for the previous release, we looked at InfiniBand for the KV cache transfer. We were looking at TCP and Rocky as well as part of the O.3. Then the other piece is we leveraged a lot of downstream images, for some key components. So for llm-d, we obviously had we used the VLM wheel, but we still had a llm-d specific image. And then secondarily, a few of the paths, especially for PD disag, we're using the non-upstream GAIE image. And so, overall goal to continue pushing, the changes that we're making into the upstream communities and making the stack really compose well together is, a key kind of goal of the project. And so this will be something we'll continue to do. In terms of widening the paths, this is really focused on progress against the overall initiatives we already have. So I think for folks' context, the DeepSeek system on Kubernetes with the wide EP, is a functional, but we still have a few, items remaining to get the performance all the way where we want to go. And so, this is something that we'll continue to really focus on and drive as part of the, next couple of months, or the next month, and then continuing to push on the PD disag overall flows, towards our North Star architecture. And then secondarily, there's been a lot of initiative to have adaptive SLO targeting in the inference scheduler. And so this is something we'd like to try to drive over the course of the next month or so. And then the other piece is we'll continue to look at expanding into new paths. So another overall, top level mission we had was to, allow the prefix cache to be bigger than memory. There's been quite a bit of work going on to, do CPU to GPU offload. And then, we'll be hoping to push forward on some of the prototypes around the SLO-based auto-scaling that have been going on into the background. So we'll hope to offer a couple of newer, well-lit paths, that maybe will be at the first level of DIM, but we'll hope to, kind of get these initiatives off and running over the course of the next month or so. I'm creating a GitHub issue for this right now, and I'm starting to fill in a little bit more concrete details to the extent that there's other items that folks are hoping to target for O.3. Please feel free to add them to the doc and or speak now. But yeah, this is something I think we want to try to lock down over the course of today and tomorrow, and drive against this roadmap for the O.3 in about a month. Any comments on this side? All right, let's jump into some of the SIGs. Maybe Greg, I think we probably covered most on the installation side, just with the above. Oh, sorry. So let's maybe jump to the inference scheduler. Do you want to start, Vida, Neely, Abdullah?
Yeah, I can start. Basically, we did some hardening of the code. There were some bug fixes for the release. We have two accepted talks on llm-d, one in KubeCon that Maroon has with Michi, and the other one is mine with John Lee about disaggregated prefill. I think it's nice exposure that we'll have there. As for technical updates, besides the bug fixes, we are adding KV event support to the inference simulators, which means that we'll be able to also support the precise KV cache, evictions, and insert into the GPU currently. So this is something that should be done in the next few days. And we prepared a lesson learned document. There is a link here. One of the conclusions is that we need a separate release manager for the inference scheduler, not only upstream GIE, because there are things that are added there, and near will be the release manager for the next release. That's it on my end.
Sounds good. Tyler, do you want to give an update on the PD disag?
Yeah, just started typing it in. So first of all, we've got a working branch up where things are working pretty well. Definitely not optimal, but definitely something functional. VLLM main has issues with, so we have to use this like hybrid external load balancing where the inference scheduler routes to the node, but then the VLLM API server is responsible for routing to the DP ranks within a node. This is a point in time thing that we hope to resolve in the next, for 0.3 to have something better in place to at least allow external load balancing to individual DP ranks. There's also issues with full CUDA graphs and also async scheduling on VLLM main that we're trying to push performance a bit further. And we also need to sort of improve our benchmarking setup. Big ticket item is still DBO, which we think could give us up to not quite 2x performance improvement. I think that's the main pieces.
And then maybe do you just want to cover a little bit of like the longer thread on the one pod per rank, just so people are aware of that in the background? Yeah.
Yeah. So so what we want, like North Star design for EPDP, YDP is having one Kubernetes pod for each data parallel rank. So we have been grinding on this for a couple weeks to try to come to a resolution. We got it working actually with privileged on. The sort of crux of the issue is one, we want to have this like pod per rank, and we need to use CUDA IPC for performance. And also the DPP kernels from DeepSeek require this for functionality. They just won't work if you don't have CUDA IPC. So we need to expose all of the GPUs to all of the data parallel ranks. We also need to enable host PID, which I don't understand why. And we also need host IPC. So there's some like security implications here that we need to work through. And we got everything working with privilege true without PD, but on the CoreWeave cluster that we're working with, this interferes with UCX due to the way they have their interfaces set up. So due to all of this, we switched over to a one pod per node, which is simpler for all of those issues. but then obviously makes the inference scheduler integration more complicated. So we're kind of in a rough state there. And there, I threw up a doc in the PD channel, kind of diving into this and what are the various options that we have going forward.
Then in general, we're trying to work with some folks on the OpenShift team to help to kind of understand like the root cause of this and hopefully come to a solution. But yeah, this is still an ongoing thread, so we're still working on the pod per rank enablement in the background, but we'll push forward with the pod per node as well in the meantime. All right. Maroon, do you want to give update on KV Disag or Clayton?
Yeah, so we're progressing on the VLM native CPU offloader or the offloading connector. The PRs are still open. I know Nick is very busy and is trying his best to push the reviews there. Rob, if you're aware of any way we can accelerate reviews there with Nick busy, that would help a lot. So that's that. There is still the one PR that connects everything together in final stages to be published very soon.
Sounds good.
We're also progressing on end-to-end chant completions. That's mentioned thoroughly or to depth in the KV-SIG calls, and we're switching focus to benchmarking using the new benchmarking SIG tools.
Very nice. Let's see, Marcio, do you want to cover SIG benchmarking?
Marcia is not available. I can give a quick overview.
Sorry, I was on mute. I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So yeah, we've been working closely with the KV's aggregation team. We have this end-to-end deployment where we automatically deploy, stand up, run, collect the data, and then deploy. And we start to implement the parameter space exploration that's needed for several products. There will be in two phases. First phase is parameter space exploration for the workload parameters. The second phase is going to be for the deployment parameters, number of P and D pods, things like that. That's basically.
Very nice. Great.
And 30 seconds left for observability. Yeah, we added the pod monitors to the llm-d model service charts. So I think those are also added to the llm-d infra installer. There's a PR for that. If not, we've been gathering requirements from the devs for like must-haves for the well-lit paths. So we'll translate those must-have data pieces into like how do you collect them from the stack, like PromQL queries or whatever. The North Star was updated to just give an inventory of what metrics are currently exposed in that tracing proposal. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to update everything to make it as simple as possible, just basic like in and out spans to just get anything so that then each team can go through and add like more complicated spans based on what they want. But I'm trying to get to the point where it's just like bare minimum and ready to review. So testing with that.
Sounds good. All right. Any other topics folks want to cover?
Just a quick auto scaling update. So we are making progress on the dev branch, and we'll be ready for the demo in our next auto scaling meeting with emulated VLLM servers and emulated heterogeneous resources.
Sounds good. All righty. Have a good rest of the day, everybody.